Hello, I'm Nobby Clark. Welcome to my workshop. Slightly different project to show you today. My wife has asked me to make an accessory for one of her cameras. What I need to make is an adapter so that she can use standard 35mm film in a 120 roll film camera. So that's the 35mm cassette, and that's the spool from a 120 roll of film. It may seem strange to do this, but this is quite a common practice doing this, and in fact there are adapters already available for this from places like Amazon and eBay. But as I've got a nice workshop here and I'm always looking for projects to do, she said would I like to have a try at making one of these adapters for her. It will be two parts. One will be the take-up spool. So I'm going to use parts of a 120 spool, cutting these end pieces off and then making up little round blocks to mount at each side so that I can fit a standard 35mm take-up spool in the middle here. So I can hold all this. So that will give a means of attaching the end of the 35mm film to the 120 spool. So that end is going to be sort of reasonably easy to do. The more difficult part is making adapters to hold the 35mm cassette at the other end. So there'll be an adapter on the top here and one on the bottom to hold that in the place of where a roll of film would go. So again, it's making a block for the top and bottom here, and then cutting the ends of the 120 spool off and mounting them each side, so it gives you the correct fittings. In fact, at sort of both ends, basically the take-up spool end and the end with the roll of 35mm film. I'm going to use this material. I think, I'm not quite sure what this is. I think it's Delron. And it's a sort of a machinable plastic, which I guess a lot of you are familiar with. I bought a few bits of this at one of the model engineering exhibitions. I've not done a lot with this. I did buy some slightly thinner diameter to make some handles for a couple of accessories that I made for both of my lathes. But this generally machines it quite nicely. It's a bit messy because if you're only making very light cuts, it comes off in very thin bits, like a bit of a bird's nest really. When you're making heavier cuts, it does come off in sort of like ribbon shapes, but the problem is that being sort of static, it gets stuck to the lathe and all over your hands. It's rather sort of difficult to clean up. I've done what I usually do and made some sort of rough drawings with some measurements, so that basically I know where I am with the project. Obviously, I apologise to anyone that has no interest in photography at all. You might not have a clue what I'm talking about here, but 120 film, well, all film basically, all analogue film material is not used as much now as it used to be. This has been very much taken over by digital photography. My wife and I do quite a lot of photography with digital cameras, and of course I do a lot of video work now, which I'd never done in the past for my channel. My wife can process and print the material, also process the film, which can also be scanned and then converted to digital format as well, so there's a lot of scope there. But she does quite a lot of photography, and still likes to use film, you know, sort of trying to keep film alive, if you like. So anyway, we'll get on with the project. There'll be quite a bit of machining, virtually all of it on the lathe, and I'm going to mount the camera just above the lathe bed so you can see what I'm actually doing. So sort of join me for this project, which I hope you'll find interesting. Right, well, as you see, I've faced the material off, and I've brought this to the right diameter. This length here should be enough to make two of the parts I need, and it's going to, each part will need a hole in each end, slightly different sizes. Both of the diameters are just a fraction over 11 millimeters. When I have got, fortunately, an 11 millimeter drill, so for the first part I'll drill this through to 11 millimeters to this depth, and then I'll need to use a boring bar to bring each of these parts to the right final diameter on each side. This is, I don't know what this material is. I thought this was Delron, but because I'm taking quite small cuts, it comes off in, as you can see, in very fine hairs, and it just goes everywhere. When you get it on your hands, you have a job to get it off again. But anyway, it's got to be done, so here we go. Anyway, let's see how we get on with drilling now, see what that does. Drilling seems to have gone a little bit better than machining this off, but I'll get it set up now with a boring bar, and I'll bring this side to dimension, then I'll have to part this off then as accurately as I possibly can to length, and then bring the other end to the correct dimensions. now I've got to part that piece off. I'll just see how this goes. And that went reasonably well. Just going to get that little burr off. This is really horrible stuff, it really is. But anyway, so that's I've bored into here the one measurement. This piece has got to have a slightly larger bore in it, because this bit will fit the that end of the 35mm spool, and so that's got to go in slightly deeper, but have well, actually, yeah, no, it's just slightly more. It goes in that pot, but the part at the back here is actually slightly wider than that, so I've just got to bore that out so that will fit into there, and then hopefully that will make the that will fit inside there, I'm hoping. Let's just see how that goes. But obviously if it's not a good fit, then obviously I can machine other parts of this down to size, but we'll see how we get on. Oh, that's actually a pretty perfect fit there. Right, so now I can part this piece off, and then machine in to the other side, the other diameter, which is this diameter here, because what I'm going to do is cut pieces off the ends here and then fix those in. That gives it the that should then give it the correct overall, the correct length then. obviously they're going to keep changing the speed of the lathe, switch it right down so that it's at its, well, it's slowest actually. Okay, well that's the second piece. So now what I've got to do is machine the other ends of both of these pieces to the right bore size. Well, that's done that one. This part, obviously I'll cut that right down so that can be fixed into there. That should hopefully be okay. Now I've been trying to be quite careful and not move the boring bar, because the other part's going to be exactly the same, so you know, hopefully I can machine that straight away. I mean, only the tiniest bit taken out of there, so let's make sure I put this bit in the right way round. And we'll do the same to this bit. Be a good press fit, so hopefully that's going to work. So I've got to obviously cut these bits. Now I can't bore into there too far, because the hole coming in from the other end is obviously a lot deeper, so I actually could take it in just a fraction more. So sort of bear in mind there's these bits coming in, you know, from each side. I think I can just afford to go in just a fraction deeper there. Yep, that's about it. So now let's see whether I can get it all fixed together. And of course at the end, its dimensions overall obviously have got to be the same as the normal dimensions for a 120mm 120 film size spool. Let's see how we get on. Bring you back. Well, I think we've had a reasonable success. The overall measurement here comes out just a fraction longer, which I'm hoping is not going to be a problem. If it is, then of course all I need to do is to sort of machine a little bit off one end or the other, or both ends in fact, equal amount, to keep the 35mm take-up spool in the centre here. So hopefully this is going to work out. The only problem I think really is going to be finding a suitable glue to glue all these parts together. I don't really know what the materials are here. I'm hoping they're not polythene, but which doesn't seem to glue with anything. But we'll just have to see you know, if there's any glue that's going to take and hold all these parts together. The only thing I can think of if glue's not going to work is whether I could pin these in place in some way, but we'll try glue first and just see how we get on with it. So that's one end. The other end is got to take it's similar to this, but it needs to take a 35mm film cassette. So I'm going to make it in, I guess, in really much the same way, machining these parts so that they fit in each end here. We'll just see how we get on with that part. I'll bring you back for that part as well, obviously. What I have to do in this part is I've got to make a spacer to go at either side of the 35mm cassette. To this part, I've already faced this off and brought this down to size so it's the same, roughly the same diameter as the cassette, but it is the same diameter as the 120 spool. But what I've got to do now is machine this part down so that it will enter into the hole here, and if you can see, there's a part across here which is a sort of register. So when I've machined this bit down to the diameter to go in this hole, it will then have a slot cut across it to engage with the little part that goes across here. I've measured what I hope is the right sort of depth for it, so I can move the tool along here to give me the right length here, so I can mark this and then machine that down to length. So I won't show all of this because it's going to be quite a lot of machining work involved, but I'll bring you back at sort of various stages of this. Well, I've machined this part down so that that goes into the hole there. Obviously that won't go all the way in because I still need to cut a slot across here to engage with the little part inside here. But what I also need to do is to machine back in here slightly, just so that it will engage into this lip on that part here. So it's not, it's only going to be a tiny little part, so that will engage right into here. So we'll just machine that little bit out. I've just got to sort of guess if that is enough to engage in here, but if it's not, after I've cut the slot in here, also I can machine that back a bit further. So I think the next stage would be to cut a slot across the centre here, and then I can cut this down to length and then drill in from this side to take the end part here of the 120 spool, which will be mounted that side. This obviously will be a piece cut off here to drop into a hole to engage that, to keep that sort of central inside the camera. But I'll take that out and I'll just cut a slot in there, and we'll make sure it all fits okay. I've cut a slot in here which will engage with the part inside here. What I've got to do now is turn that little lip back so that it will slide into the recess here. I think it just needs a little bit more taken out of that to make that register into that fine. So we'll do that now. Yep, that's it. Just have to sort of creep up on that measurement to get it right, and I think that's going to be okay. Right, so now what I've got to do is part this off to the correct depth here, but from that shoulder, because the measurements I took when I worked this out was from that edge to that edge, so got to make sure I get the measurements set from the correct position on that. So what I'll set up now is set up with a parting tool to do that. Okay, take that to the length 446 thousandths. So see if I can catch the part as it comes off. There we are. So that's the first operation now. The next operation will be drilling a hole in here to take the 120, the end of the 120 spool, so that will mount into here. Yep, so we'll set up for that job next. Right, so that's that part finished. Just need to just deburr that, and then I can cut this end piece off, and then that can be glued into here. How well the glue is going to work, I don't know, but I've got this glue, Patex super glue liquid, which well, seems to work okay. It's quite a nice applicator. This, you remove this black section and you squeeze these little bits in, and that will release some of the glue. But I noticed that the distributor for this is Henkel, who distribute Loctite. So I'm hoping this is going to work okay, but we'll see. So I've now got to make an almost identical part to this. So this one will fit in there, and I've got to make a similar one for this end as well. I'm going to do that off camera because it's virtually the same job. So rather than you sort of sit through all that lot, if I do it off camera, that's going to be fine. I can bring you back once we're sort of ready for final assembly. I did show making this part, which fits in here like that, and I said I was going to make the part for the other end off camera because it was much the same, but of course when I got into it I realized it's not the same at all. Actually, there are a lot of similarities to it, but the problem is you can see the end of the cassette here, and this part has a sort of a tubular part coming out. Now with this part, that part of it has to go right down inside, so you need basically a groove all the way around here, going right down into there, and of course the slot cut across here. Machining this piece down to diameter, really no problem at all. Cutting the slot, again, not such a big problem, but getting a slot down here was a sort of a major problem, really. I didn't have any lathe tools that would have done that. It's almost like a sort of trepanning down into here, and I guess it might have been possible to have to ground a tool to do that, but it's going to have to be so thin in sort of width and depth to get down inside him. I didn't really think that was going to work that easily, to be honest. So overnight I sort of came up with a plan to do that, so I actually made a tool to do it, which is this. So I can get that into shot. I used a piece of silver steel because obviously that's going to be the sort of toughest material I've got, and I drilled a hole obviously through here, the same diameter as this, and then machine the outside down to give me the thickness here that I wanted for the slot. And then filed that out to give me a sort of a cutting edge. I thought just one cutting edge would be enough. The material obviously wouldn't need hardening because I'm only really machining into plastic, so I put this piece into the lathe chuck and this piece into the lathe chuck, drill chuck rather, and then ran that into here. Oh, sorry, there's parts in the way here, but that went into here to cut that round. And the depth I needed to go basically was equivalent to this depth here. To get it sort of close enough, once I'd machined that part out, I gently tapped the cutting edge inwards very, very slightly, and then went through that again. I think the mistake I did make was running the lathe under power at its lowest speed, because I think it just built up a bit too much heat in it basically, but it sort of did the job in the end. But then the slot needed to be machined a lot deeper. This one was quite easy because it's all above, so there's no problem in machining that out at all. It didn't matter if I went too deep, it wouldn't have made any difference at all. Now I only machined, this is about 2mm wide, so I'd started machining it using a 2mm end mill, but the problem is that the small end mills I suppose necessarily are not very long, so I could only machine down to this depth, which when I started checking, it wasn't really enough. It's the only 2mm end mill I've got, and I don't know if they're made any deeper than this. I think if they were made longer, they'd be more likely to snap under use, because this obviously is 2mm here, but then it tapered and builds up to a bigger diameter at the back. So the only alternative I could think of was using the 2mm drill. If I bring that down into view, was using a 2mm drill. So I moved it along very, very gently, drilling down like sort of chain drilling, if you like, and then took the drill right to the back here, ran it down right the way down, and then very, very gently ran the mill chuck across to clean it out, and that sort of seemed to work okay. I've tried this, let's move that back up out of the way. I've tried to fit that. It goes almost all the way down, but I think actually that part is too high. I think I need to take the skim off there, but I need to put that back in the lathe to do that, so it almost registers. There's only a tiny little gap down here. Just to tell you something else, when I set initially this one up, obviously I had to find the centre. One way of doing it would have just been using a pointer in the collet or chuck just to find the centre here, but I thought, well, the most accurate way is using an edge finder, and I use my electronic edge finder. But the problem obviously is that with the electronic edge finder, it needs a metal contact here as well, which obviously it's not got, it's plastic. So came up with an idea using a feeler gauge at the side here and holding the feeler gauge against this V block, so that would, if you like, complete the circuit. So I could take a reading off that side and that side, and then use the half function to find the centre. That worked fine. What I did do, when I brought the edge finder, I can do this without blocking the camera, when I brought the edge finder up to here, I set the Y position on the DRO so that when I move the edge finder around the other side, I could zero the edge finder here, so I'd be in exactly the same spot on both sides, so I would get an accurate centre. That worked fine. Another option would have just been using my older friend, the cigarette paper, and I could have just held that against the edge finder and just keep moving it until the edge finder grips the paper on each side. That would work equally as well, but I found that solution using a feeler gauge was quite a good option, really. Anyway, I just thought I'd bring it back to show you that part, because as I said, there was a lot more to machining this part than I'd previously thought, actually. So I can now take this out, and I'm just going to face down that end a little bit more so I can get that to seat properly in there, so it will go all the way down. It's actually, I think at the moment, hitting that top is hitting against the inside here, so I'll get that to be a good fit, because I want that, like this one, to be a tight contact here, and the same on that side as well. But I'll do that I probably will do that bit off camera, because there's a bit of a jiggery pokery and messing around to get that to actually work. But I thought I'd just show you that, because that probably was more interesting than any other part that I made in this project. Anyway, I'll bring you back when I've got this part completed. Well, that seems to have worked out okay. I took you through most of the stages of the machining work on it. The last part proving to be a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. But anyway, that's the finished part for the take-up spool. So it has these two spacers that I've machined out of this material, and on each end there's the parts I cut off the 120 spool, and in the centre here there's a 35mm take-up spool in the centre here, and I've glued all these parts together, as I mentioned, using this Patex super glue, which seems to have worked fine. This part I'd made yesterday. This is obviously a 2-day project, and it seems to have glued quite nicely together. The other bit that holds the 35mm cassette, that's in two parts. That's the way it would sit in the camera. So this is the top section. So again, it's a PVC spacer which has a little groove cut in it, so that would engage into there. And the bit that was more difficult was the bottom half. Both of these bits have got the ends of the another 120 spool glued to them, and that one's obviously needed the slot cut around that central part, which I've got to fit. It's obviously, we've got to test this out now in a camera to make sure this fits in okay. When I'd made the part, I did before I fitted these end caps on, I took some measurements. This was a fraction oversized in length, so I had to sort of work out the length it needed to be, and then halve that and take that amount off each end. So I'm hoping that I've got the two parts that are going to fit okay in the camera. I think the most important part probably is the take-up spool, because that obviously is a sort of a moving part as it winds round and pulls the film across. This end, the film is literally just going to be pulled through the cassette. So these end caps obviously will sort of revolve. We can do that without these bits falling out. These bits, and you probably can't see that moving, but these bits will need to revolve around it, allowing the film to come through. So I think that being possibly still a tiny bit oversized might be okay, because that will, I think, clamp a little bit firmer inside the camera. But obviously we're going to have to, well, my wife rather will need to do some tests on it, and if that is too long, then I probably have still got room to machine a little bit off the inside of these, but we'll see how it works out. So going over, I'm quite pleased with the project. Really, it's something a little bit different, actually making something for someone else as well, which is it's quite nice. Basically, what I do in my workshop, it's a hobby. Everything I do is for myself. I have done a few little jobs for other people, but only very minor things really in the past. And also the thing of making the little tool to cut the groove in, that was an interesting little job to do as well. So there we are, all finished now. I hope you enjoyed this and enjoyed the project along with me as well. So thank you very much thanks for watching if you have watched, and thanks to all the subscribers to the channel and all the comments I receive as well. Thanks very much, and see you very soon. Bye bye.